Hi, and welcome to the SuccessPaTh show, where Christian business owners share their tips for success to show you how to succeed more effectively with your kingdom goals. I'm your host, Violet Detre, and I am uber excited to have a very incredible guest today. You're going to want to really tune in because this man, when I first spoke to him, highly, highly anointed. I just felt Holy Spirit flow during our conversation. And actually, when I was reading the bio again, I got emotional. So let me give you a formal introduction, Jason.
Okay.
Jason Sisneros. Jason is a speaker, an entrepreneur, a best-selling author, a renowned business expert and coach who owns over 24 businesses, has consulted for hundreds of other business owners, and has completed more than 70 turnarounds for small to mid-cap businesses. Through the art of leadership and the science of strategy, he has become the architect, building structurally sound, action and outcome-driven businesses for himself and his clients. He's now a highly sought-after specialist in company turnarounds and works with top names in the thought leadership industry like Tony Robbins, Keith Cunningham, and many more. Jason uses his influence, energy, and his resources to give back and serve. He's in service with more than 15 charities that are working to make a difference. In Jason's life, it isn't about being successful for the sake of success, but to have the opportunities to support what he's passionate about and to ultimately change the world. Welcome, Jason. So glad to have you here.
What a great introduction. It's almost like it was written for you. No. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Well, I'm glad to be with you. I'm happy to join your show, the work that you're doing and the message that you're bringing to people, especially in the kingdom, where right now we need to build up resources so that we can fight back, right? Against a lot of the things that we see are happening out there. I'm just honored to be here. Thank you for asking me to be here.
I'm super grateful that you're here with us. And I don't know if you get this question a lot, but your company is Anton J. I'm curious, what's behind the name?
Yeah, Anton, Anton, and then Jae. When, one of my mentors is Tony Robbins, and his company is the Anthony Robbins Companies. And pretty much difficult to sell that company, right? So what I wanted to do was come up with a name. I was adopted very, very young. And when I got older, after my adopted father went to prison for attempted murder of me and my mom took me to dinner that night that he got sentenced. And she said to me, by the way, he's not your real dad. And I was like, that would have been nice to know.
Yeah,
but,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. But at that time, she told me that I had a father that was out there, and tracked him down. I was doing a bunch of research on my history, my family history, and my great grandfather, I think 6 times ago, or whatever, his first name was Anton, and he came across from Spain and did some pretty cool things. And so I named the first name after that. I wanted my initial to be in there. And we were doing a lot of work, still do actually in Asia, and then in Europe, and JAE has a positive connotation. So I kind of mashed them together, and it's Anton J Global.
Amazing. That is just beautiful. And yeah, my family comes from Spain as well. So do you speak some Spanish?
I do, un poquito.
Ah, poquito, qué bueno. So Jason, you mentioned, about your stepdad and him going to prison because of that tragic incident, and you've overcome other insurmountable odds. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Sure. And as I tell the story, when the listeners, what I have found after doing this so many times, I've spoken on stages around the world and done podcasts like this, and people want to hear my story, but I want everybody to listen from the fact that I know, and I realize, and so is Violet, we realize that you're in your own journey. So it's not necessarily about my story, other than the fact that you can see yourself in other people's stories and pick up one of these little tidbits to be able to apply to your own life to improve that process, right? So my story, I was adopted when I was really young. My mom married a very bad guy, and there was lots of tragic incidents. I love how you put that. There was lots of them. My nose, as I was growing up, was on all sides of my face and smashed in. And, you know, he broke my nose multiple times. And the first time that he broke my nose my mom was trying to escape. We had a little red Volkswagen. We were trying to escape and get to the police station. Well, he had a brown International Harvester pickup truck that he was chasing us in and rammed us right. And we literally went side over side 3 or 4 times and landed on the police station lawn. And when we came out, my mom was bloody. It was my first broken nose from him. And, you know, the police officers at the time, this was another time, right? I'm going to be 50 this year. So this was a long time ago. And, you know, and the cop, the first thing he asked her was, what did you do to make him mad? Right. And that's, so I work in advocacy work in domestic violence and human trafficking, as you know, and also feeding people. But it's one of those things. It was a different time, but we still kind of have that attitude reflected in the courts and so on and so forth. So long story short is that, the first time I stepped in front of him to take my mom's beating was when I was 9 years old. And from that point forward, every time I was around and I could stop it, I would step in front of him. And that's how I ended up with so many broken noses. And that led to ultimately him being finally arrested. He had set our house to explode. And just by the will of God, seriously, by the will of God, we didn't go home for a couple of weeks. My mom went on a vacation that she'd never done before. He was on the run. And I, at the time, was hanging out with you know, sort of a ruffian crew and went on like a 2-week drunk and didn't go home. And the neighbors had reported a gas leak in the neighborhood, and they went in and they broke all the windows, and they found that he had set flints on all the windows, all the doors. So if we would have opened those doors, we would have been blown to high heaven, so to speak. So, but that was my upbringing. And along the way, there was wrestling coaches and football coaches and teachers. And, you know, after I got out of high school and I did what I knew. I was dealing drugs. I was a good fighter because I'd been fighting a full grown man my entire life. So I got into dealing drugs, but I was good at fighting. So I was good at collecting money from people that owed. Right. And that was the beginning of my life. But I had mentors step in at God in God's timing every step of the way. Let me know, hey, there's this other side over here. There's other opportunities. There's ways that you can utilize your skill sets, your God-given skill sets, in ways that ease suffering instead of causing it. And so that was really my upbringing. And it took, and I'll kind of close it out this way. My grandma always made sure I had a Bible. We weren't very religious, but I would get beat up so bad sometimes that I would get locked in my room. And my grandma always made sure I had a Bible. So I read it as a series of stories, as opposed to a religious tome or a structured church or a legalistic viewpoint. And I remember the last drug deal I was involved in, my son was born 3 days earlier. And I was thinking along the lines of, man, I don't want my son to grow up in this lifestyle. And that night I was sitting there with my buddy and I said, I think I'm out of the lifestyle. I don't know what I'm going to do next. But he said, well, I need your help tonight. And I've got a scar all the way across my chest, which is so symbolic in so many different ways, because that last drug deal, I got stabbed. And as soon as the knife went in my chest, a Bible verse popped out, and it was, the sins of the father are born onto the children. Right. And I thought, if I live through this, I'm out. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Right. And a lot of people can relate with that are watching your show, that we get to a point in our life when we say, enough's enough. I'm not doing that anymore because those behaviors have gotten me these results. But we don't know what's next, you know, and you can fast forward that incident 20 years into the future for me. And I was on I'd started a business. I went legit, started a business, ended up going through a bad divorce, lost my company, ended up massively depressed because I hadn't dealt with any of that stuff from my childhood and didn't really follow the Christian path, Violet. It wasn't, I was angry. I was a very angry person, and ended up to a place where I was going to commit suicide on a cliff in Southern California.
Oh, wow.
It was the first and only time I've ever heard the voice of God audibly. I was sitting there in the dark as the sun was, it was right after the sun had dropped into the ocean, and I was going to shoot myself so that nobody would find my body. And I, was getting ready to do it. And I heard audibly, not yet, not yet. And I turned around and looked because I thought somebody spoke it out loud. And then it was not yet. And I thought, okay, not yet. Now what? Right? Now what?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that began the climb back out. I was still homeless. I was still massively depressed. I was addicted. I had all these things to overcome, but this gentleman by the name of Pastor Ricky was at a homeless shelter the next day, and he handed me a Bible, and he handed me Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. And I got out of that book this one thought: if it's in your moments of decision where your destiny is shaped. And I was quite angry still at the church, so I kind of didn't dive back into the Bible yet,
Yeah.
but I did start to realize that God was with me, even though I wasn't with him, every step of the way. It was really humbling, and began that climb out of the abyss to realize every step I took forward towards God was one more step away from my ego. And the more that I got closer to God, the more the calling to serve was, and it started out with my employees, and then it started out with my community, and then it started out with, the next step was domestic violence, helping victims of domestic violence. And then I got a calling to go do rescues. We're the ones that kick down the doors and pull these little girls and little boys out of the underage sex trafficking trade.
Here in the States?
So I started, my very first one was overseas, and then multiple out were in other countries. And then I got a calling, and met with a guy by the name of Pastor Rudy, who runs an organization called SERT Ministries, SERT. It's Search, Evangelize, Rescue, and Train. And that's where I really got my calling. As I told you, I didn't get baptized until November of last year. My girlfriend, who I've been with for almost 5 years now, solid Christian. Pastor Rudy, one of my heroes in this life, big beard down to here, ex-Marine. Neither one of them pushed religion on me. It was their who they were and how they behaved, and a reflection. Like, I wanted to be more like them, that attracted me to it. And finally, the calling was so loud in my ears. I was like, I'm either going to reject this forever, or I'm going to step into my calling. And it was a natural step. And Pastor Rudy, I had the honor of him being the one that baptized me last November, and I got baptized with my girlfriend. So it was very special.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
very
amazing.
special.
That's a wonderful story. Wow. And Jason, you have a calling to teach, guide, and lead now. Can you give us some tips for Christian business owners? Because you're the expert in this. People that have tried really hard, spend a lot of money, energy, they put their heart into this business, and now they're like totally in debt, possibly depressed, maybe even suicidal. How can you encourage them, or what are some practical tips that they can take right now?
I've been there, and I just want everybody to hear this. You're not alone. You're not alone. My organization, Anton J Global, was started as a temporary transitioning from a book that I wrote to get some stories. And then it became clear to me that it was much more than that. As I was in the charity world, making my own wealth, and I looked at it, and even no matter how much wealth I accumulated, I would be a drop in the bucket, a drop in the ocean of the suffering that's out there. And it came to me one night when I was like, well, my company is doing good for these companies. They're helping people through the sea of fake gurus that are out there, they teach you how to be number one on Google or whatever it is. And you spend all your time and effort and the energy in that area. And you forget you're running a real company. You're running a real business that has 150,000 things going on at all times. And to get so myopic and to be buying a program from somebody who's never owned a business before, I went bankrupt 3 times, y'all, like 3 times.
Wow.
And everybody that I've ever listened to and that has mentored me has failed miserably, because without failure, I don't believe you have lessons. If you're just regurgitating the thoughts of someone else, you're missing the underlying premise of their failures, right? Anybody can read a book and go online and say that they're a guru and they fix businesses and all that other kind of stuff. Very few of the people that you're listening to have actually run a business, right? The people that are out there that you're listening to. And so, so you're not alone in your search. Not only the sea of fake gurus, but also competition, also COVID, also a 9/11, also prices going up, prices going down. The industry, technology, right? Which a lot of people that are watching this are inundated with. You got to have this new software program. I just want to stop and give some real practical advice on that arena. Is that so many people are focused on technology in their business and what it's meant to do. Think about Amazon, Uber, these types of businesses. It's meant to push the customer away from us as far as possible. In small to mid-sized companies, our job is to get as close to the customer as we possibly can, to build a relationship, to fall in love with their outcome at such a high level that our purpose for being in business is to ease their suffering. It's to solve their problem. We fall in love with their outcome, and then correspondingly, we fall in love with our employees' outcomes. Now you have something, right? Now you have something. And there's a lot of education that's out there that's teaching business from 50 years ago. You live in a new world. We live in a shortage of employees. We live in a highly competitive marketplace. We live in a technologically, overwhelmed society. If you, as a Christian business owner, use the same principles that you use when you're bringing somebody to Christ in your business, in other words, build a relationship, right? You have a chance to fall in love with their outcome. You have a chance to fall in love with that person's outcome. You have a chance to fall in love with their family. You have a chance to be able to really allow your business to shine God's light through you. That's the way that you build something solid and long lasting.
So,
95% of companies, 95% of companies that start today will be out of business in 5 years. 95%, 50%. It's the flip of a coin. 50% will be out of business by this day next year. And it's because we're learning incorrect principles. That's the reason why I love the Bible. That's why I love the Word of God, is because there's principles embedded that you can implement into your own company that make it long lasting, that make those principles so that when we utilize our business as a tool of our responsibility, we're able to take God's innovation, right? We're a child of God. We're imbued with his DNA. Like we have all of those skill sets embedded in us, and we get so caught up in the world's viewpoint of what success is. I'm driving the right car. I live in the right neighborhood. I've got the right clothes. I've got all these things. And that is not a principle of success. It's a principle for guaranteed failure, right? You're trying to drive the right car and live in the right house to impress people who don't like you anyway. You know what I mean? Like, so reversing all the way back to the premise of your question, we as Christians are called to create freedom. Okay. And I'm going to say a phrase that may be offensive. It's not meant to be, but slaves cannot free other slaves.
Yes.
Right. You have to be free yourself to be able to free other people. And yet very few of us as Christian business owners ever sit down and go, okay, God, what is the purpose of my freedom? What does it look like? And so as you sit down and you write that out, you say, look, I need to have a home for my own family, right? I do need to have transportation. I really do. I need to make sure that I've got enough money in the bank, that I'm eating so that I can be strong. That's the difference between being rich and being wealthy. And so if you build wealth, for a kingdom wealth, right? Then that means that you're building something that is not about self-aggrandizement. It's about building a shelter against the storm. And so you do want to focus on that. And that has a number with it. The greatest thing that I think we miss as Christians is that numbers are our friends. And so as we're building our company and we look at it from a numerical standpoint, you go, okay, my freedom is going to cost X amount of dollars. And then there's a whole bunch of things that have to happen in order to be worthy of that goal or that outcome. And you build towards that. Now, the next thing that happens is you start to have excess. And it's in this excess that we get lost, right? You take somebody, Jeff Bezos, and I don't ever hold anybody's success against them, but the man is worth $90 billion. When is enough enough? And how much of that 90 billion is going to ease suffering for the children of the world, for the starvation of the world, for the sickness that's out there, for building homes for people that can't do for themselves? We are called to be the strength and the shield and the shelter for those that can't do for themselves, right? Not hope that our tax dollars are going to go to a government that's going to take care of people. It's our job to make sure that we look for those charities and look for those opportunities for our excess to become a blessing in the lives of other people, right? Yeah. And the only way that can happen is you get really great at this thing. I believe that there's giftings across the spectrum. And I'm speaking to Christians who have a gifting of being able to run a business. That's who I'm speaking to. If you set what your freedom is, and mine, I'll tell you, there's 3 types of freedom that I have found. There's lifestyle, which is your home, your cars, your vacations, that kind of thing. You've got the ability to start another business, the freedom to start another stream of income. And then you've got the third one, which is philanthropy, right? Or charity or tithing, right? Whatever direction you want to go with that. That is what your excess is. And you have the ability to do that. If somebody calls me up and says, hey, we need a jet to be able to land at this time in this country, and we need to be able to afford to send 20 people out there, I can write a check out of God's bank account, right? Yeah. And I have the time and I have God's armor on and I can go strap up and put on my bulletproof vest and go. That's freedom.
Yeah. You have access to resources.
I have access to resources, and every Christian does. We're children of the creator of the universe. You know what I mean? And this is something that I don't get with a lot of Christians, is that we forget that we're his children. Like, we have all of those things. We're not God, obviously, right? But at the end of the day, we're imbued with some of that same DNA, the innovation, the creativity, the ability to overcome all odds.
Amen.
And we forget that because the world wants to tell us, hey, you're a preachy Christian or whatever it is, right? You and I talked a little bit about language before I come on here. I have a tendency to cuss. I'm not going to cuss in your home, but I have a tendency, to do that. And at the end of the day, my calling is to be real. It's to be authentic. It's to say, I failed. I cheated in my marriages. I went bankrupt. I did all of these things. But for the grace of God, right? Yeah. He can utilize my life as an example for what other people can do. Right. Hallelujah. And that's it. And I'm scared to death to step outside of that calling, because I know what my life looks like when Jason Sisneros is running it. It's not good.
Come on. And Jason, we only have a few more minutes left. So I want to make sure that the audience knows where to reach you, and also about the offer that you have for them. You offer a free consult, and where can they go for that?
Yeah. So if you go to, what would be the best place for that? If you go to AntonJae.com, and you put down in there, you'll find, contact us, and just mention this podcast. You'll get a free 45-minute, with my team. I have a team of amazing people, and a lot of times we can solve a lot of problems in that 45 minutes. And at least put you on the right path. But get clear on your freedom, get clear on your calling, and just know you have all the tools. The more you serve, right? The more you serve, the better resourced you are. And it comes like magic. I've seen it happen on rescues. I've seen it happen in businesses. I've seen it happen across the board. And I just think it's definitely God's work that you're doing here. And it's called, our motto with Anton J is to help good people make more time, make more money, get more time so they can do more good. That's it.
Hallelujah. Yes. So generous of you, Jason, to offer that. And we'll put everything down in the description. That way you can access it easily. And you're on Facebook or Instagram, which is your favorite social media platform where they can follow you?
Well, Facebook is the best. We have my podcast is called The Bald Avenger Show, BALD,
cool.
The Bald Avenger Show. And you can find that on Facebook or YouTube or all over the place. Be advised, there is adult language, and it's not as as Violet's show, but we do talk about important things. So thank you for that opportunity to be able to connect with people. And my prayer is that you realize that God's vision for you is so much bigger than the fear that is in your heart, that it's just, you're being called to do something great. Our calling as business leaders is to definitely make more money to resource the kingdom.
Yeah. And I know that your mom is prophetic, or she,
very much
lives in that. So are there any prophetic words that you feel are bubbling up inside of you?
Well, I will tell you this, whether it's prophetic or whether for the last few years, I have felt, even prior to my baptism, is that God was calling his warriors forward for a time such as this, right? I know I've seen it happen. I've just watched how, my Christian brothers and sisters almost have this Teflon shielding around them right now, to be taking bigger risks and to be stepping forward more and to become more vocal about our position, because the world is desperate to hear voices that love genuinely and without expectation for anything in return. So I would just say, listen to that calling. It's dangerous to ignore it.
Yes. And I've been hearing that in the prophetic realm as well. So spot on, Jason.
Thanks.
So thank you so much again for being here, Jason. And to you who's watching, put your biggest takeaway in the comments below and share this video with your friends. Also, if you want to see more content like this with more success tips, make sure to hit subscribe. Thank you so much for being here. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.